I'm so glad you're here. I'm Kate Champion. I'm an author, therapist, and generally curious human whose life has been full of ups and downs, twists and turns, mess and adventures, some intentional and some not so much. Welcome to Living Big Mindfully, a later in life podcast. Here are 3 questions for you. Are you ready? Are you in midlife or beyond? Or maybe struggling with next steps or finding your feet? Possibly feeling like something's missing, not quite right with your life? Or maybe you have a sense that you're really not living your own truth. Okay, you're right, that was way more than 3 questions. But were there any yes answers? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. That means that you are in the right place and this is the show for you. So grab a seat, get comfy, and join us for inspiring, heartfelt conversations. Conversations with real people just like you and me. Listen in as we chat about life, love, health, healing, and thriving well into our later years. And let's commit to creating honest, fulfilling lives and giving a high five to living big mindfully. One more thing. Make sure you visit katechampionauthor.com. Check out Never Too Late and You Are Limitless, my best-selling books. And while you're there, be sure to download your free hiking guide. And remember, check out our Living Big Mindfully community on Facebook. And please share your favorite episode with your friends. Thank you so much. Okay, that is enough for me. Are you ready? Great. Then let's dive in. In this week's episode of Living Big Mindfully, I am doing a solo show with a focus on how to find a therapist. So tune in as I share insider tips, my personal experience as a therapist and as a client. Yes, therapists have stuff too. Plus, I share openly about caring for family members with mental illness. This is a mini crash course packed with everything you need to know. In this episode, I cover why there is no health without mental health, the transitional events we all experience over a lifetime and why they matter, sacred space, therapeutic fit, and why they are non-negotiable. I take a deep dive into helping you figure out all the different helping professionals out there, what they do, what they don't do, and how they can help. I talk a little bit about coaching, building care teams, and my golden rule. Make sure you don't miss that. And if you have a loved one that's struggling or dragging their feet, I totally hear you. And I know that can be challenging for sure. So I've added some tips and strategies about how to nudge someone along even when they're not ready for change. And of course, throughout the show, I share tons of tips, strategies, and sage advice, all with the intention of helping you save time, money, and your valuable energy, and ultimately finding your way into the care of somebody wonderful. I truly hope this episode will be your guide and shine the light along your way. Hi, this is Kate Champion, and today I am doing a solo episode. And it's all about finding a therapist. Why do I record this today? Why do I think this is important? It's because I get this question all the time. It's like, how do I find a therapist? How do I find a good fit for me? And B, it's also because, there's such high rates of mental health, depression, anxiety, trauma, grief, loss right now that people are really having a hard time accessing care, and be kind of confused about how to find care when they do go in and try and find a good fit for them. I am an author and a podcaster, but I also am a licensed, well-trained mental health professional. I have over 2 decades with over 30,000 hours of clinical practice. And honestly, over the years, I've helped thousands of people with grief, loss, anxiety, trauma, addiction. I work a lot with transitional phases, those transitional phases in life, and also physical health concerns such as cancer, autoimmune diseases, nervous system dysregulation, and chronic stress.
I really love what I do, and I offer a full range of services through my private practice. We also offer courses, retreats, and online healing intensives, and they are all designed with healing in mind. And I offer those nationally and both internationally. I have some clients in other parts of the world, which is actually really cool. So this is all good stuff for sure, but yet over and above this, I bring this also with my personal insights and lived experience as a client. And yes, therapists have stuff too. So therapists, I'm a big advocate for therapists having therapists. So I have my own therapist. I've had a series of therapists. I've been through therapists. And I also hear a lot of stories from therapists about therapists. I serve a lot of therapists as well, physical health providers, therapists, social workers, nurse practitioners. So I hear a lot about what's going on out there. And also from my lived experience as being a mom, right, trying to navigate the mental health system and trying to find access for my teen and young adult. So I have, experience across the lifespan. In my mind, there is no health without mental health. Good health really includes physical well-being, mental well-being, and spiritual well-being, whatever that means to you. And it's just so true that what happens in the mind affects the body, and what happens in the body affects the mind. It's a two-way street. Mind, body, mind, body, mind. So it's no surprise to hear that I am an advocate for access to good quality mental health care as we move through the stages of life. You're right. We don't really even have to have something kind of wrong with us, like a clinical diagnosis, depression, anxiety, OCD, whatever. Sometimes in life, we have these transitional phases that we just are hard and we struggle through. And sometimes they can kind of knock us back a little bit. So just take a moment to think about all the transitional phases that we go through in a typical lifetime. So here are a couple of the major ones that come to my mind. We think about that transition from middle to high school, that transition from high school to college, the transition from the teen to young adult, that today in my experience takes about 10 years. We're looking from about 16 to 25, 26. That window has really expanded. That's a huge transitional phase, especially today. We think about going from single to some kind of partnership or marriage. We think about going from no children to children. We think about, the loss of a loved one. It can be a human, it could be an animal, a pet. We think about the transitions through kind of accidents and illnesses that we encounter in life and a lifetime. We just can't help it. Let's take a moment. Can you think of any more? Can you reflect on your life and think about, times where there's been a transition and that has really been challenging? And remember, we can also think about joyful events as transitions. There are still changes in life, like a wedding, right? Can be definitely a joyful event, but a huge transition that can bring up its own stress. Having your first child, again, can generally be a joyful event, but can really bring up a lot of transitional kind of stresses within that event. So trust me, these are pretty typical events that can rattle even the most well-adjusted people. And in reality, sometimes in life we'll endure much, much more, even more challenges. So for example, a death of a parent in childhood, there's a huge transition. Physical abuse, verbal abuse, domestic violence, bullying in school or high school or college. Again, a huge transitional event. Death of a child, a massive, massive one. Suicide, the list just goes on and on and on. So again, it doesn't really have to be anything kind of clinically wrong. You can't see me, I'm kind of doing air quotes, but there can be these times, these seasons in life when we just need a little bit of extra help. So that's why the show today, and that's why I felt called to make this episode and really encourage people to reach out. And it does take a lot of courage to reach out for help. It's not easy to talk to a complete stranger about what's happening in your life and the symptoms that maybe you're experiencing. But that said, I can't tell you how many people leave my office stating that, oh my gosh, they already feel better. They feel more hopeful, or they feel like a weight has just been lifted off their shoulders. The value of having a safe, confidential space coupled with really the full attention and presence of a compassionate listener is wildly underestimated. I mean, that is such a gift, such a gift. Again, another reason that I'm putting this together and encouraging you, and hopefully you will get some good information as we go through how to find a therapist. And through this episode, I will be throwing in some what I'm calling pro tips, right? So there'll be tips along the way that you can inside tips that you can take and you can use to help the process, because it's not easy to find good care. So let's start with the basics. Let's assume that you or a loved one has decided to seek counseling or therapy, and just note that I use those terms interchangeably. So counseling and therapy are interchangeable. In my mind, they mean the same thing. And also with the explosion of online platforms that includes coaching and other self-help gurus and counseling and therapy and blah, 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 blah. A simple Google search can lead us down a next frustrating, expensive, time-consuming rabbit hole. So I really want to try and help you avoid that. All right, so let's take a moment. I'm going to start with a different kind of helping professionals out there. Like I said, you do a Google search and all this stuff comes up and you just don't know what's what and where to start. So this is a bit of an overview, brief overview of professionals in the caring profession that are licensed, that are well-trained or well-qualified to help a person with any kind of adjustment, transition, and obviously more serious things like anxiety and depression. All the people I'm going to outline have training, and like I said, they're licensed. They'll have license in their state, and they're well trained and well qualified to help people, move through some of these things in life. So the first one is the licensed professional clinical counselor, so LPCC for short. They are master's degree professionals who have a professional identity in counseling across this lifespan, who are well trained to work with individuals, families, groups, and they treat a whole range of mental health and behavioral health and emotional challenges. So that's one individual that you begin to look for. They also offer help with consultation. They can consult with individuals, couples, families, and groups. And again, they're generally a master's degree licensed therapist with training, with clinical hours, and they have to meet certain credentials through their local licensing boards. And they have to go and get education every 2 years to requalify. And you can actually go online, you can go to your local licensing board, and you can look up that person to see if they've had any challenges or any kind of complaints against them. And also to make sure that they are in fact licensed. I laugh at that because there's some people that are still out there with their shingle and are not in fact licensed. So, something to think about. The next person that comes to mind would be a marriage and family therapist. So the acronym for that might be MFTs. This is also a mental health professional who's trained in psychotherapy and family systems. The MFT is licensed to diagnose and treat mental and emotional disorders, and they also help with a range of clinical problems, including marital, relationship, parent-child concerns, all within the context of the family or the couple. So if you're looking for something relationship-specific, maybe you're looking for couples counseling or some family therapy, that might be the provider that you might keep your eye open for. The next one that comes along is social workers. Social workers can be found everywhere. It's a very broad profession. They are also trained, licensed professionals who are really devoted to helping people and communities work through challenges that they face in everyday life. Social workers practice in so many places. You can find them in hospitals, hospice, you can find them in schools, you can find them in prisons, you can find them in all kinds of places. And they're advocating for people. They're all about improving lives of individuals, families, and groups of people. If you come across a clinical social worker, that person is licensed and trained in helping people with clinical needs, again, such as anxiety, depression, trauma, etc. So if you're looking for a licensed, independent clinical social worker, that's your person to work with some of this mental health stuff and transitional stuff. So those are really your kind of therapist counselors that are out there. And then we move on to the psychiatrist. Everybody asks me, so what is that? Can I see a psychiatrist? Can I see a psychiatrist counseling for therapy? And generally, psychiatrist is a medical doctor who has a specialization in mental health, in psychiatry. So, for example, you have a general practitioner who specializes in children. So a psychiatrist is a doctor who specializes in psychiatry. So they're looking at, neurochemical imbalances. They're looking at possible underlying medical conditions that contribute to kind of mental health concerns. And they're also prescribing medication. So if you're looking for medication, that is the best bet for you, is to look for a psychiatrist who's board certified in adults, or if you're looking one for a child, that's board certified for children. And again, they will specialize in assessment, diagnosis, and treatment, but their corner of this is really diagnosing and prescribing psychiatric kind of medications. So be mindful about that. They're not going to be doing the talk therapy piece of things. They're going to be seeing you. They're going to be looking at medication, and they're going to be prescribing that. And there'll be a follow-up, maybe in a month, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 3 months. It'll be a pretty short, time-limited visit. Some psychiatrists are much more collaborative, meaning that they'll work with the therapist or they'll work with the counselor. They'll be part of your kind of care team. And some are not so much. So also you have to kind of figure out what's important to you. What do you want here as well? And again, yes, psychiatrists can do psychotherapy, but most will refer the talking part of the care to people like counselors and psychologists. So another new player in the kind of care world, the psychiatric care world, is the psychiatric nurse practitioners. I love psychiatric nurse practitioners. They do such an amazing job. We're seeing more and more of these providers, and I think it's wonderful. So they kind of bridge the gap a little bit. These are also licensed medical professionals, generally nurses, who are board certified to provide psychiatric care. So they've had extra training, and they have had extra training specifically in mental illness. So think of it as a medical professional with a background in nursing who has chosen kind of an advanced degree with a concentration in psychiatry. The nurse practitioner can work collaboratively with psychiatrists. They work collaboratively with your care team. So, for example, your counselor or your therapist, and they provide a full range of assessments, diagnostic, treatment planning, and they provide the medication. Again, they're probably not going to sit down and give you the therapy part of things, but they will do a check-in, and they will maybe work a little more collaboratively with your care team. Probably easier to get into, maybe a little less expensive. That's enough said on that. I really enjoy working with the nurse practitioners. So the next on the list is psychologists. So what do psychologists do? They help people also effectively with life issues and mental health concerns. The psychologists have a doctoral degree, and they have spent an average of 7 years in education and training after they've received their undergraduate degree. Once they become licensed by the state, they can provide a number of services, including diagnosis, evaluations, assessment, and psychotherapy. They have a background in the study of human psychology, and they also run the spectrum. Some people just do testing, some people do evaluations, some psychologists just do research, and some do clinical practice. So that's kind of where we are with psychologists. They do not prescribe medication. So again, they're kind of the talk therapy piece. If you're looking for a clinical psychologist, it's going to be talk therapy. So I have to add, again, when you do a Google search, you jump onto Instagram, like there's this life coaching and, coaching for trauma and coaching for anxiety. So what exactly is life coaching and coaching? So I would like to spend a minute on this as well. There's a massive explosion in coaching and life coaching that offer to treat a range of mental health concerns. And I'm using my air quotes here, treat a range of mental health concerns. So what's the difference between coaching and traditional therapy? Great question. In short, coaches are not licensed. They do not have governing boards. They do not have codes of ethics. They don't generally have specific educational degrees in psychiatry, psychology, clinical mental health, rehabilitation, etc., etc. So it's kind of, I don't know, disrespect, because I love coaches. I do coaching. I have coaches in my world. It can be a little bit like the wild, wild west. They're not going to offer clinical services like a psychologist or a therapist. So the benefits of coaching can include more kind of community support, right? So if you're struggling, so let me use it. So I offer healing intensives. That is over and above my clinical work. It falls into the coaching bucket. And when I offer healing intensive, that includes much more community support, and it includes more directive, focused work. So when I have my coaching hat on, I can really be much more directive with that person, right? I can do much more focused work. I can be a little bit more real with them in many ways. I can push them a little bit harder with some accountability. I can push them a little bit harder towards a certain goal. And there's absolutely a ton of value in hiring a coach. But just make sure that you know what you're signing up for and that they are well credentialed in the area that you're trying to get some help with. They are a great part of your care team, right? When I'm talking through this, the idea is that when we have something we're trying to work through, whether it's a diagnosis, depression, anxiety, trauma, or it's a physical health concern like, cancer or autoimmune disorder, or it is just a life transition, like having a baby or kids leaving home or something like that. The idea is to really build a care team that you can trust, that you can really go to, that is out there, that has your back. Coaches can be an amazing part of a care team. So that's just something to think about. So today the focus is on finding a traditional individual therapist. So again, there's groups out there and there's all kinds of levels we have, which we're not going to go into today. So how do I find a therapist? There are several ways, but the first suggestion I might give you is that if you're comfortable, ask around, check in with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Sometimes neighborhood forums can be a helpful resource. I know that I'm listed. I didn't list myself. Somebody's listed me on some neighborhood forums. And the community comes in and says, hey, I'm looking for a therapist in this area. And the forum will come up with, try this person or that person. So look on neighborhood forums. They can be really helpful. Word of mouth is probably your best bet. If you can get a referral from somebody that's already been to somebody, and then, go ahead and find out if they're a good fit for you. I can't tell you how many people come to me through word of mouth. So I think that's a win-win. If that draws a blank, you're not getting any joy out of that, the next suggestion I would have is to contact your medical provider, right? Your GP, maybe your gynecologist, maybe you see a functional medicine doctor. Like, contact one of your medical providers and see if they have any people they refer to. I have a couple of doctors that do refer to me. So be thinking chiropractors, osteopaths, massage therapists, all those professionals often have mental health people that they know or that they feel comfortable referring to. So if you're still drawing a blank and nothing's coming up, the next thing I might suggest is for you to contact your health insurance provider. Whether you want to use insurance or not, that's a whole nother conversation. Let's assuming you have health insurance, contact your health insurance provider. Today, thankfully, mental health care holds the same weight as physical health care. So that means your insurance company has people, kind of case managers or care managers, or even sometimes nurses that can help you link with well-qualified providers who are within your network. So then it's often simply a quick phone call and a brief conversation about what you're looking for. And the care manager can give you a couple of names, several names that you can begin to kind of work through and make inquiries with. And sometimes even the care manager will actually link you directly, right? They'll send an email to the provider. Hey, X person is looking for some care for anxiety. Do you have any openings? Do you have any availability? Because sometimes the care manager will actually do some of that legwork for you. So this is a benefit because you got a twofold here. One, you're getting, a referral from providers that have been vetted and accepted by your insurance company as, well qualified. And also, you'll know that they're in network with your insurance provider. So if that's something that's important to you, then that can also be a good way to go. Sometimes your employer will also offer short-term mental health services through an employee assistance program. So that's EAP for short. So again, check with your employer. Do they offer any short-term care through your employee assistance program? Sometimes they can be a good start. Generally, just kind of a pro tip here. Generally, they're not going to offer long-term care. It's usually 3 to 6 appointments. It will be a well-qualified mental health professional, but it's usually a much shorter window. So, again, that works for somebody, but not for everybody. And generally, if you go through your employee assistance program, there is no cost to you for those 3 to 6 sessions. So again, something that you can think about. The best way to access your employee assistance program is through your human resources department or your employee handbook. So you can kind of go to those resources and see what you can find. So if all of that turns a big fat 0, then your next option is the dreaded internet search. Yeah, this may seem daunting, but I have to tell you, my pro tip here would be go straight to Psychology Today. So psychologytoday.com. I will put that in the show notes for you. And go to the Therapist Finder. There's a search bar. Jump on there, Therapist Finder. Here you can search. You can put your zip code in. You can filter by insurance. You can filter by location. You can filter by gender. You get your filter in there. And then put your zip code in and then see what comes up. You'll get, you get several profiles that will populate in your area as you begin to narrow that search. Go through that list and start to kind of read over the profiles and just kind of begin to kind of feel your gut, like what sounds like it might be a good fit for you, who sounds like they might be, might be a good person to work with. Save the ones that resonate with you, take a break, and then go back and reread and keep paring down until you really have your top 3 favorites. Once you have your top 3 favorites, jump onto their websites and do a little bit of a search. Read their bios, read some of their areas of expertise, some of the things they specialize in. And once you found that these 3 people could be a decent match for you, now it's time to get those 3 people and it's time to make some phone calls. So this is pro tip, another pro tip. I actually remember, even though I just said phone calls, I actually suggest that you email an inquiry over a phone call. an effective therapist is going to be pretty busy and they're going to be back to back. So trust me, it's going to be easier for them, particularly for someone in private practice, to respond to an email inquiry at the end of the day. Plus, an email is going to save you time and help you keep track of who you've been in contact with. It's also going to decrease the high likelihood of a very frustrating game of phone tag. So now you have contacted your short list of prospective providers, and hopefully they're taking new patients. If you don't hear back from the provider, assume they are not taking new people. So that's just, if you don't hear back in 2 or 3 days, you can try again if you like. But if you've tried twice and it's been a week and you haven't got any kind of auto response that they're out of the office, then just assume that they're not taking new people and move on. So by now, you've probably been beginning to connect with a couple of people. The next is what I call the discovery call. And if the provider offers a brief consultation, that should be no cost, 15 minutes or so for a brief phone call or even in office or Zoom meeting, I encourage you to schedule that. And this is a great opportunity to ask questions and, more importantly, really get a feel for the provider, get the vibe, once you see or chat with that person face to face. So during this discovery call, there are 2 tasks for you. So this is another pro tip. There are 2 things that you need to think about. First of all is the practical, or what I call the business end of things. So be chatting about things like schedule fit. How do they handle insurance? Do they take it? Will she bill the insurance company? Does she have evening appointments? I'm saying she or he have evening appointments if that's important to you. Ask questions about general therapeutic fit. Does that individual work with depression or anxiety or the thing that you are particularly bringing to the table? And along with simple demographics, does that person work with your age group, sexual orientation, or culture, or ethnic or spiritual background? So those are 2 tips there. So making sure you take care of the business end of things, ask those questions up front, and then make sure you ask about the therapeutic ends of things to make sure that they are a good fit for what you are bringing to the table. During the call, there are 2 tasks. The first task is the practical, what I call the business end of things. You're going to chat about things like schedule fit, how do they handle insurance, how will they bill the insurance company, do they do evening appointments if that's important to you. You'll be asking questions about general therapeutic fit. Do they work with anxiety or relationships or whatever you're specifically bringing to the table? And also this is a time to ask about simple demographic information. For example, does that therapist work with people in your age group? Do they work with people with your sexual orientation, cultural background, spiritual background, that type of thing? Much of this information will also be on their website, but it's important to double check these things before you commit to scheduling your first meeting, especially if they're important to you. The second focus of this call is, at the same time you're asking these questions, kind of be listening to your gut. Be feeling, is this person really hearing me? Are they really answering and getting to my questions? How comfortable am I feeling right now? And you're beginning to look for a tiny glimmer of connection, enough to feel like, okay, this provider might be a good fit for me and my needs. And if all goes well, go ahead and schedule, and if you're not feeling it, just thank them for your time and move on. So here's another tip I think is really, really important, and I'm going to say this over and over. The right therapeutic fit is vital. With this first call, again, you're trying to see if this person will be a decent fit. Again, you're not going to know for sure, but you're getting a sense. So be looking for that, because that therapeutic fit is honestly the cornerstone of the work, in my opinion. Okay, so you've done your homework, you found a decent fit, you've made that first appointment, and now what? Generally, that you're heading towards that first meeting. You've got the appointment schedule, you're heading for that first meeting. Some people are going to call it an intake or an initial assessment or a diagnostic assessment, whatever. It's basically the first meeting where there's going to be a lot of information gathering. Some therapists might ask you to fill out a lot of paperwork beforehand. Others will do everything in session. I'm a do everything in session kind of person because I really want to connect with and hear that person's story. Plus, I hate filling out a whole bunch of forms before I see the doctor. So I just don't do that. There's also going to be some business things here too. Again, things like signing informed consent, going over confidentiality, figuring out the billing and the payment thing. They are similar across professions. So wherever you go or whoever you work with, from a private practice to a larger community health center, that's all going to be fairly similar. There'll be some differences, but it's fairly similar across the industry. When I meet with somebody for the first time, I'll welcome them in. I'll introduce myself. I will ask them if they have any questions before we get started. And then we'll kind of dive right in. I really want to hear all about that person first. I want to hear about their story. I want to hear about their hopes. I want to hear about their struggles. I want to hear about how they want to use our time together. I want to provide enough safety, space, and opportunity so that person can really tell their story at least as much as they are comfortable. And as an independent practice owner, I get to do that. I get to do that. If your appointment is with a larger mental health or community mental health center, then that experience might be a little bit different. But just be ready, possibly for a bunch of check the box type of questions before you even get to see somebody. So again, this is something to think about, right? Do you want more of that one-on-one kind of care and connection, or do you want more of the kind of check the box, take your number type of feel? So I don't know, something else for you to think about. A pro tip here, I would say, even if that first meeting feels quite clinical, I would actually encourage you to hang in there and hope that the second meeting will be a little more helpful, that a little more connection. So I would just hang in there through the first meeting. People just have stuff they have to get done paperwork wise, and then go in there for that second meeting and see how that feels. So what people often ask me about, is there a difference between in-person appointments and virtual kind of online appointments? And yeah, there is a difference. And if you're trying to weigh up the pros and cons with a provider, if you're thinking online versus in-person, here are some considerations. There are pros and cons to both. If you have an opportunity, even if you decide to work with somebody online, if you have an opportunity to meet with that provider in person for at least the initial appointment, that would be my recommendation. I think it's vital to get a vibe about your provider, seeing their office space, the waiting room, the general environment, getting that kind of face-to-face time with that provider. There is a richness in both the nonverbal and the verbal communication that comes from that first face-to-face connection. So that said, virtual sessions are also very effective. I have people that I haven't met face-to-face, and we've connected online virtually because, they're out of state or out of the country or whatever. And those sessions are very, very, very effective. So there are many reasons you might want to choose to meet with a therapist virtually. Some of the benefits are it's ease of access, right? So, if you're working, it's easy to kind of unplug, put that 10 o'clock therapy appointment in, pause your day of Zoom meetings, jump on a therapy appointment and go back to work afterwards. So it's ease of access. Some people have medical concerns where they either don't want to or can't get out of the house. So that's a wonderful way to use kind of virtual platforms. Work schedules, childcare, elder care responsibilities. Maybe you're caring for an elderly parent and you really can't get out too much. Those are all wonderful reasons to think about therapy virtually. Meeting online definitely offers more flexibility for you and the provider. I know sometimes if I'm doing a virtual appointment, I can be a little bit more flexible with my schedule. So, and that's probably the same for people seeking care too, right? So it does offer a lot more flexibility. So if you do, here's another tip. Ready for another tip? If you do decide to meet with a provider virtually, please ensure confidentiality. Make sure that your provider is using a HIPAA-compliant platform. Note, a regular Zoom call or a Facebook call is not HIPAA-compliant and will not guarantee your confidentiality. So make sure Zoom Pro will, if they're paying for the upgrade, that will, but regular Zoom and definitely kind of Facebook calls are not HIPAA compliant. So be thinking about that. And sometimes, again, this is me, this is what I offer. Some people enjoy the flexibility of what I call a hybrid model. So the therapist offers in-person and they offer a online option, and that the client can literally pick and choose. One week they can come in session, one week they can jump online. I literally have people that sometimes decide like 5 minutes before the appointment, right? They're scheduled to come into the office. Something comes up. I don't know, it's usually childcare or work, something. And they send me a note. Hey, I need to switch to virtually. So I quickly send them a link. We meet virtually instead. So that I love. That is like magic. So if you want that type of flexibility, then that would be something that you want to talk about upfront. Does that provider have a hybrid model, and is it pretty easy to switch kind of back and forth week to week? Okay, you found your person, you decided to meet, you've had your first in-person or virtual meeting, right? That intake. And now you're kind of on the fence and you're heading in to what I call the work, right? So the first session is again, really getting the background and information and the business end of things. The second, third, fourth, and ongoing sessions is really when you begin to kind of dive into the meat, what I call the meat of things, or the work. So it takes a couple of sessions to really kind of begin to find your feet, to feel comfortable, really for also the provider to get a sense of you and what your needs are. So I would say my thing is I have a 3-session rule. So if you've met with somebody 3 times and you're not feeling it, move on. So that's my pro tip. If you've met with somebody now 3 times, you've had 3 sessions and you're not feeling it, not feeling the connection, not feeling like it's going in the right direction, I would encourage you to move on. Your time and energy and health are important. And I would go back to your list and I would start over again. Don't waste tons of time and tons of money and tons of energy on 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 sessions when you're really not feeling like you are kind of connecting or have that kind of therapeutic connection. So yeah, the therapeutic fit is everything. So those are my thoughts on that. So one question that I get a lot is, how can I help my partner or my husband or my adult child, young adult, kind of get into therapy? They've got lots of stuff going on and they haven't dealt with anything, and they've got some work to do. And they're frustrating everybody, but they have little insight and little awareness and little desire to kind of get the care they need. So you're probably not going to like this, but the honest answer is you can't. You just can't, right? You can't make anyone change or seek help or show up for anything if they don't want to. Change just doesn't work like that. There's a whole cycle and stage of change, sort of stages that people go through. And when somebody really doesn't have any awareness or desire, that's kind of like, somebody's really they've got their heels in the ground and they're dug in and they don't have a lot of awareness. And that's very, very difficult to nudge somebody kind of when they're in that stage. That said, you can, and I do believe you can begin to plant some seeds. You can see they need help. Everybody can see them that they need a little bit of help. They've got their heels dug in. They don't see it. But here are some tips and strategies to nudge someone along. So listen. You can kind of just listen to, their laundry list of complaints or whatever. Just be patient and begin to kind of listen. And if you can listen without all the shoulds and all the coulds and all the, kind of finger pointing, you should do this and you should do that and blah, 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 right? If you can just listen and just kind of take it all in, then I would encourage you to do that. If you can be patient, remembering change takes time, and people have to kind of come to it by themselves. So if you can be patient, that can be helpful too. Kind of put your impatient part on the back burner so you can just kind of hear them and just kind of be open to their process. Sometimes it can be helpful to offer, figure out what are the barriers, right? Is this person, are they struggling with a ride? Are they struggling with childcare? Are they struggling with, support getting to the first appointment? So you can offer a little bit of help, if that feels appropriate. You can offer, I'm here for you. If you need me to watch little Johnny while you go, just let me know. No big deal. If you want me to come with you, I'll be happy to sit in the car while you go in. That kind of thing they can just kind of put those out there. They can be little seeds that person isn't alone and they have some support. The other thing to know is, just let that person know that you are there for them whenever they are ready. It's just simple, matter of fact, I'm here for you. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. No pressure. And again, there are several cycles in that cycle of change, and it really does take time. I would say, of course, if a loved one is having kind of a life-threatening situation, suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, harm to self, harm to others, that feels like it's just obviously beyond what we're talking about here today, then that's a no-brainer 911 call or contacting your local emergency services and getting that person the care they need kind of quickly and imminently. And that's probably a whole nother conversation, but that's not really what we're talking about today. But I need to share that. If that is the situation, then do not give two thoughts about reaching out and getting the care you need from local emergency services if you're in that kind of high risk situation. So I'm going to take a breath here, and we covered a lot of ground today, and I'm really hopeful that will help a little bit you or a loved one kind of begin to navigate the care system, get the care that they need, start to get the ball rolling. And just remember, it just takes time, right? It takes time to do the work. It takes time to find a good fit. I've been through several therapists. I love the therapist I have now, but I have been through several and different people at different times of life, right? I have a very different connection and relationship with the therapist I have now versus the one I had, 10 or 20 years ago, right? Because my life has changed so much. So just know that, right? Just know that the fit is important. People have seasons in life. And if you are struggling with that person that you feel like they need care, but they're not going, they don't see it, just know that there'll probably be a pivotal event that kind of kicks them into care. And that can be anything. It could be a breakup, it could be a car accident, it could be something with work, it could be mental or physical kind of breakdown or health crisis, some kind of pivotal event which will kind of naturally kind of kick that person into more of an action stage when they're looking, and they will come to care, on their own accord. And then you'll be there for them. You'll be there and you'll be able to help them, and you'll be able to kind of guide them and offer them support. And they'll feel comfortable because you've been patient and kind. they'll feel comfortable kind of coming to you and saying, hey, I think I'm ready. How are we going to do this thing? That is ideal. If you can get to that, that's ideal. So my last, in wrapping up here, remember, I'm going to put some of those, I'll put the Psychology Today link in the show notes. And just sage advice wise, my last thought would be, in all of this, remember to care for yourself. That is super important. And also, I would encourage you to remember that you are not alone. There are so many people right now, families and couples and individuals that are, struggling with all kinds of things, depression, anxiety, relationship concerns. So just know that you are not alone. There's a lot of resources out there, and it's just doing a bit of the legwork and finding yourself a good fit. There is a fit out there for you, and I would encourage you to just keep on digging until you find the right care. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about the content today, any questions, thoughts, feedback, I'd love to hear from you. So reach out. You can reach me on my katechampionauthor.com. You can use the contact form. You can email directly. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, all the places. So feel free to reach out, ask me a question. If you're interested in services, if you're interested in coaching or retreats or online healing intensives, definitely reach out to me directly. I can give you more information about that. So thank you. I wish you all the best. Go get that care that you need. It's a wonderful journey. I think self-awareness, right? If we can increase our self-awareness, that is the biggest gift, not only for ourselves, but also for the other people around us. So go for it. Thank you so much. Take care, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time.